wants to start us off? Question, comment, concern, right here, okay.
One of the reasons my husband and I chose the academy was because it is for the whole child. So you have the athletics, the academics, and the spiritual. Athletics is very important to us. A track seems like a foundation for almost any sport, and so I'm wondering, not that there's going to be a love lost for the track we have, but what is the future for our track team and other sports that he's running in the track?
Good question. Did everybody hear the question about the track? You know, when they did this building and the media center, they made some changes across the street. They tried to lay out a full-size track somewhere on the property, and they couldn't fit it. So what they did was they created the track that we have, which is not big enough for competitive meets. So while we could practice there, the high schoolers at least run their meets at Jesuit. And we have kind of a quid pro quo with them. The Jesuit swimmers swim here, and our track girls run there, and they run kind of in tandem with Jesuit, because most of the schools they're competing with are co-ed. That's an issue, but you know, as we look at what our needs are, something had to give. You know, we had to get rid of one element, and it just turned out to be the track. And we knew that that wasn't going to make certain people happy. Now, with the turf that we have on the athletic field, some of the training that kids would do on the track, not all of it certainly, but some of it can be done on that field. And certainly our athletic director has contacts with other places where our kids can run. And unfortunately, because we're so landlocked here, we can't have the entire athletic facility that we like. So something really had to give, and it had to be done.
Can I jump in? Because I know that my middle school track program will be affected by that more than anybody's, and it's a big program. And Captain Vargas and I have already started looking at, can you practice throwing in a place where you don't have to have the ball, the shot doesn't have to go the whole way? Are there nets? Are there things? Because I think we can use the existing space here. We're just going to have to be somewhat creative about it. Because it is a big program for our middle school, and we want to see it continue. But like Art said, we had to make some decisions there. But I don't think it means the end of the track program. No. I just think that we luckily have some time here to problem solve it and to help it continue to grow.
There are children that are very well behaved, and in any type of environment would be served well by really any kind of arrangement. But there are other children that are hard to control. How does the teacher control the classroom when they're maybe not even in the room? And how do the kids that are controllable, if you will, or more controlled, that are they're collaborating and learning, not get distracted by these other kids. How do you deal with that in this open environment? Great question.
No, I think what you're speaking about, it speaks to engagement, quite honestly. And if a child is engaged, actually all of that misbehavior and lack of engagement goes away. And I'll give you an example where one outside of our building and then one inside our building. Was it last year that we went to PK Young? Yeah. So last year, the elementary administration, we went up to PK Young, which is at the University of Florida, which I had to get over because I don't want the Gators. But they have, and if you think of our plan from 0 to 10, 10 being the most well-designed you can make, ours is maybe like a 5-ish. Theirs is like a 9. And you walked into the building, and there were 200 children, all engaged. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, quite honestly. You had some kids in a small room, direct instruction with the teacher, they were sitting on the floor, like almost in beanbags. Some kids, the kid needed to go like this, the rocks, they make chairs that you can flip them over and so they can sit on a stool and they're going like this. So they're taking care of that need to move and not distracting anybody else. But it was amazing to see, but they had worked very hard on their curriculum and the units and the way that they approached the kids. It's all about that engagement. And then from here, I will say here, to me, when a child's really engaged with something, their volume of level doesn't go up. It actually goes down. And we saw that at PK Young. And we see that in the pockets that are happening when there's the collaboration, particularly, we're very excited for the middle school innovation piece. you know, for like the 6th grade research project, that's a science project. Right now, it's a science teacher and the language arts teacher is trying to coordinate. Well, wow, what if you go into that space and work it together, and actually that engagement just goes up. But, you know, with kids, particularly my middle school friends, they're all about control. Those with middle school families, you know, they're all about control. And if they can control a little bit of how they go through their day, whether it's the seating they get to choose, how they get to sit, you'd be amazed at how you take that off the table and then it's about the learning. And it's not about I'm sitting a certain way or I'm facing a certain way, but it's all about that motivation and engagement. And there's little things in the research and the books that we have read, you know, that speak to that.
Speaking of the research, how can folks access the research that we do have available? Is it on the website?
It's on the Where We're Going page on the website, so you can check that out there. There's several books that, if you're very interested, things like Creating Innovators by Tony Wagner, Drive by Daniel Pink, How Children Succeed by Paul Tough, that are amazing books that speak, they take, and how can I forget Carol Dweck's Mindset. There's some amazing research and things that are they're proven, and then you can always go up to the educational pieces like Marzano. They may be a little more dry for you. You may not find them as interesting as the other books, but they're on the Where We're Going page on the website, Art.
Thank you. So check out the Where We're Going page on the website if you want to check out some of the research upon which our thinking is based.
I was just curious as to the fact of what options you looked at for parking.
What options did we look at for parking? Well, the only other option we would have would be to acquire some of the property over there on Julia. And, you know, we'd have to pick that up. Julia Circle is the piece of property that is right next to our property on the other side of the street. We thought about that, but we'd have to pick them up one at a time, and didn't know how long that would take. We really don't have any other options. You know, the shopping center on the other side isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. So when you are faced with a limited amount of space, the only opportunity you have is to go up and to try to make the space that you have serve more than one purpose. So when we started thinking about how we could possibly do that, you know, a multi-tiered parking structure with athletic fields on top seemed to be the way to go. When we put the Arts Center in, we're going to lose 60 spaces. So we had to read 60 more plus, you know, another 60. So we know that in the parking garage, even in the smallest design that we've kind of looked at, there's about 130 spaces. There are other designs where there are more. So, you know, we could gain anywhere from 60 to 70 to maybe over 100 parking spaces. You know, that would allow us to maybe park the students there, maybe move some faculty. The faculty are going to work in the arts building, move them across the street, and open up more spaces here for visitors. And so, you know, believe me, if I had an alternative to putting that kind of money into a parking structure, I would take it. But we just don't see any alternative if we want to address the parking issue.
Currently on the high school parking lot, I know you're leaving that one.
Yeah,
as
the
it
local.
is. Right, so I was just curious as if you consider building on top of that one.
The space he's talking about is this space here. Well, one of the reasons why we didn't select this space is because it's so narrow. And secondly, and maybe more importantly, the attorney who's advising us felt that we'd have a better chance of getting it approved if it was tucked back here, rather than right out on McDill where, you know, it'd be so much more visible. Now, you know, if we get shot down here, you know, plan B might be to rearrange some of this stuff. One of the reasons why we want the arts building here is because of its proximity to the bridge. And it's not too long a walk for kids to get back and forth during the day. Because you're going to be taking your art classes, your music classes in this building, and then if you're a high schooler, you're going to have to get back over here. So if we move this back further and move the garage up, it would make it a little bit more complicated for the kids during the day.
Maybe this is already happening, but what kind of investment or prep will be happening for the faculty? this new teaching method?
Okay, so we've already been working on that. This year we had an expert, her name was Gail Donahue, come in. She gave the faculty some in-servicing on block scheduling strategies and how to work with extended class periods. We have this program called the Innovation Fellowship that we just instituted, and we've chosen 8 teachers to pilot it. And they will be learning how to work in this, the innovation lab that Art showed you. We're going to be building, hopefully this summer, getting it done and getting that taken care of, so that we're getting a professional to come in next week. His name is Chris Hazelton, and he's going to be in-servicing these 8 fellows. And then we're going to be spending the entire summer working with these teachers. And then when they start working in the labs, part of their position is to coach and mentor the teachers on faculty who were not chosen for this pilot program. So that by the end of the year, everybody will have had an opportunity to work and understand in the innovation lab and with this new type of learning. So it is in the works. And of course, there's the research out there. We continue to do our research and work on 21st century learning.
And the other piece of that is addressing your culture and your mindset. And so in elementary school, to teach kids to work collaboratively, you have to be very deliberate. And you can't just assume because they're older that they know how to be nice to each other and how to give feedback and how to hear feedback. And so we're starting to train through responsive classroom, which is a way where through morning meetings and things of that nature, there's very specific structures that you use to help model that for kids and teach it to kids, so that as they grow older, then all of these instruction strategies that show increased student achievement, such as feedback, they can then hear and give and understand, how to handle that. Because sometimes it's all about that almighty grade, like did I get a 99 on the test, and that's really not what it's about. It's did I learn the material. So it's sort of two-pronged, and so it is continuing, but we have started it already.
So the Innovation Lab starts in the fall,
Right.
and that will be maintained until the building renovations are done.
Exactly.
So will you be alternating the teachers that run through the Innovation Fellows?
This first group of Innovation Fellows, it's a 2-year program. So we are going to really spend a lot of time and effort training them. We're paying them a stipend to work during the summer on this. But eventually we will move to a second group of Innovation Fellows, sure. Now, depending upon the popularity, see, what we're hoping happens is this. That students are going to talk to their other teachers, and they're going to go home and say, oh my gosh, I was in that innovation lab today, it was so exciting. But the only teacher I have who can take this into the innovation lab is Mrs. So-and-so. The other 7 classes, I'm in a regular classroom. So it's going to start to percolate, we hope, from the ground up, and kids are going to go into their classroom and say, why can't you take us into the innovation lab? Well, I'm not an innovation fellow. And then hopefully the other teachers who weren't selected in the first round are going to come to us and say, what do I have to do to get the training I need to fully utilize that room? We're not assuming, even though some of our teachers are doing very creative things, we're not assuming that they're all ready to move into that classroom. That's why we're making it very special. We want to make sure that the teachers who use that room and the students who are in that room with those teachers get the full benefit of a room like that. But eventually we're going to have to expand that circle and make it larger and larger, sure.
Just expanding on what we were just talking about with the Innovation Fellows,
Sure.
Are they at all levels, or am I on? Are they at elementary, middle, and
Just
high school?
middle and high school.
Okay.
Just middle and high school. Let's talk about that for one moment, then we'll give you a chance to your second question. One of the reasons, and I'm going to let Bridget chip in here too, but one of the reasons why we have elementary and high school in there is because of the type of furniture we're putting in there. We want to make sure that when we furnish the spaces for the little ones, the Da Vinci Studio, their library, their classrooms, that we have age-appropriate furniture. And not just smaller versions of adult furniture. Furniture that little kids are going to be comfortable on. And that's an entirely different thing that we'll be looking at, and where the elementary school people are really going to have to weigh in, and where our interior designer is going to weigh in. If you look at our media center now, it's beautiful. But, you know, the little tables and what have you in the elementary section, for the most part, are small versions of what the bigger kids have. So we're going to do something different for them.
And I think the other thing is that when we had to make that decision, the research shows that as kids progress in school, they become less and less engaged. And so this is an opportunity to re-engage them, because as much as I like to think that all of my middle school, and I know Camille would like to think all of our high school children go home every day and run into the room and say how excited and what a great day they had, that tends to happen with the younger children more, and as they get older, they become a little bit more disengaged, which is very normal. You know, that's what research shows, but this is an opportunity for us to re-engage them and show them, if they take that ownership of their learning, really where they can go with it.
As you know, we're always fighting over gym space.
Right.
Any more thoughts to expanding on the gym?
I'd love to expand the gym, and initially we were thinking about that as part of this program, but, you know, we had to be realistic in terms of how much we could raise. You know, we're talking about a project now that's going to be in excess of $15 million. To throw a new gym in there, which would have cost us maybe $6 or so million at least, you know, would have driven the cost way up. Now, you know, that doesn't mean that that can't happen sometime in the future. You know, part of our plan here is to create an environment here at the Academy where it's going to last for the next 130 years. And I'm sure that at some point in that time, they'll be doing another capital campaign. I won't be involved, but somebody will. And so, but I think that's a legitimate question, and if we could do it, we certainly would. But, you know, we had to make choices, just as we had to with the track, we had to make a choice about this. And we felt that the academic environment here was our top priority. That and the music and the arts in the high school, we really wanted to address those things, and we think this plan is addressing both of them more than adequately.
How do you know that it worked? How are you going to measure the outcomes of
Well,
this?
that's a good question.
We've already started our data collection. I think, you know, good, bad, and different. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know in the history that I've been here 8 years, and I think you're my third president, right? We know we've had a lot of turnover in leadership, and finally we're settled in the leadership where we have begun that data collection so that we can see where we currently are and where we'd like to be in the future. And that's from things like, there's obviously, you know, we have AP scores, SAT scores, I have ITBS scores, but it's also culture surveys where the kids and the students, you know, are doing surveys on a semester basis to see what's going on. I feel those sorts of things are what we're starting to do.
I think that part of our success is going to be on how well our students do getting into the high school of their choice, how well they do in high school, how well our high school graduates do at college, they get into the colleges of their choice. Those are going to be very, very apparent in public ways to measure whether we're having greater success. We believe very strongly, based on the research, that if we can truly transform the educational program here at the Academy, that they're going to succeed wherever they go after here. Because they're going to be equipped not only with the knowledge, but the skills to succeed in almost any environment.
As a junior parent that my daughter, and we're going through the college process, more and more of the higher level colleges are minimizing more and more some of the influence of standardized testing. So I think that we're seeing from the top down some of that influence changing because they're looking for kids who are doing more than just the SAT and the AP scores, and they're looking for children who are making a difference. So statistically, I think we can look ahead and say we are absolutely looking at those questions and kind of following some of those trends. But I'm also going to kind of share a little personal disclosure. I had a daughter here. I had 2 children on at the Academy, and I just struggled with what I was doing. I was fortunate to be on the forefront of this with Mr. Ramo. And when my husband and I had to make a decision as to where do we send our 2 little ones, we decided to bite the bullet and pay the tuition. I'll tell you what it is. I was in corporate America for my 20 years before I came to the Academy. I have a husband who's not in education. The 2 of us looked around at the table at our friends who were successful in every facet that you would consider to be representative of the world, whether it was medicine or law or corporate America, nonprofit. I've got people doing global jobs. Every one of us was most successful and happy because of the skills we're talking about teaching. And that's where I encourage you to go home, look around at your life and the people who you most look up to and say, what about them stands out? Because never once has anybody asked me my SAT score. But I know that what I and my husband value in our friendships and in the people we hire and who we promote are the skills we're talking about. Can they get along with people? Are they honest communicators? Are they personally accountable to their own behaviors? How do they challenge themselves every day? So I encourage you, as you look at this, it is scary, but maybe let go and take a look around at what you most value in your life, and I think you're going to find some grounding in that.
We feel that this transformation that we're proposing for the Academy is absolutely necessary. As we move further and further into the 21st century, not only are schools going to be changing radically, but you already saw the pictures up there of the workplace. The workplace is changing. The expectations for these young people when they go out into the work world is different than it was for you and for me. You know, they have to be able to think critically. They have to be able to be problem solvers. They have to be able to communicate. They have to be able to think quickly on their feet. These are the types of skills we're trying to teach, trying to encourage, and we really feel that this environment is going to enable it to happen to a greater extent. We feel strongly about it. We hope you do too. It's going to be transformative. That's the word that I think is most appropriate here.
I am one of those people who have been down the road of open classroom, guess and go, spell, no spell, it's not important. So I'm a little concerned because I have seen it come and I've seen it go. One of the reasons I first brought my older girls here was I like the structure. I like the tradition. So the reverence. I'm not, is that reverence part, the traditional part, still going to be part of the academy? And I don't want to lose that.
Well, I don't think we have to lose that. Certainly, one of the things, the reason why we had Sister lead off is not so she could get out of here early, because she stuck around. It's because we really do feel and believe in our hearts that remaining true to the mission that the sisters started here, is critical, and it's the most important thing. And we also believe, though, that one of the hallmarks of a Holy Names education has always been to be progressive, to be at the forefront of educational thinking. You know, I'll dip into some of their history. When Blessed Marie Rose was first starting, and was looking at training some of her teachers, I think it was Blessed Marie Rose, with training her teachers to be the best teachers, she knew that the best teachers in the area at the time were the Christian Brothers. So she sent two of her sisters to live with the Christian Brothers during the week and to learn educational practices from them. And then they came back and they taught the rest of the sisters. So right from the get-go, Blessed Marie Rose and those first sisters were interested in what? Learning what best practices were, right? And incorporating best practices into the education that their sisters were going to deliver to those children. And then if you look back in the history of this place, and you look at the type of curriculum that the sisters offered back in 1915, 1916, it was a rigorous college prep curriculum, heavy on the sciences, math, history, the arts, at a time before women could vote in this country. So they were very progressive. They knew right from the start and throughout their history of the importance of a solid educational program. And that's what we are promoting here. That's what we're going to continue, the best educational program possible without losing the things that make it a Holy Name school, the things that Sister talked about. We don't have to be, we're not going to be less rigorous. We're still going to hold the students to high standards, but it's going to be different. It's going to look different. It's going to look different from what you're accustomed to. It's going to be outside your frame of reference. It was outside my frame of reference before I started getting involved in it. But I'm telling you, I believe, as much as I believed anything, that this is the way for the school to go. And we can be a pace setter here in Tampa. We're not going to be a pace setter internationally because it's happening. But we can be here in Tampa. We can be a place, we're already a place that many, many different kinds of kids want to come to. I think the demand is going to be even greater. I'm sold on this, and I think we can marry 21st century teaching and learning with the wonderful history, tradition, the mission, the charism of the sisters, and keep those things into the 21st century. Because if we can't do the second thing, there's no point in doing the first. That's the answer to your question. You know? There's no point in us being another good, independent school. There are plenty of good, independent schools in Tampa. What makes the Academy special is that we're more than just an independent school. We're a Catholic school with a charism that comes down from a group of women who've been dedicated to educating children for hundreds of years. And that's going to continue.